Right.
Okay, welcome to everyone. As you know, I think yesterday, and I've also mentioned it this morning today, we've got our J4021 representative, Julie Hambleton, and we also got Pete Hannon with us here. We're going to be discussing the whole surrounding or the whole thing regarding the Birmingham bombings, were in 1974. I think that's right.
Yes. Yeah.
I should know that really, but in 1974. So I think a lot of people, particularly younger people, that are on our group. We got 7,000 people. We've got a big age range. So I think number one, we want to highlight the whole thing, and we want to try and help the justice group. But secondly, I don't think it would hurt to enlighten people about actually what happened, and just listen to the story and just make your own mind up about it, because I probably don't know enough about it, or as much about it as I should, and I'm looking forward to this podcast, just to learn something really from people that are directly involved in the actual bombing and the outcome of it. So I'd like to just quickly say hello first to Julie, who's on behalf of the Justice Group. Julie, good morning.
Good morning, Steve. Thank you for inviting me onto your podcast.
You're welcome. And Pete, hello to you as well. I forget that you're there, mate.
Hello, mate. All right.
We're all right.
Yeah. There's a few things I'd like to say. Obviously, Julie can back me up with a lot of stuff around details and whatever. But it almost like in the lead up to the bombings, the way the situation was around Birmingham, because for a lot of people, they almost like have November the 21st, 1974 is the day things went wrong. But from sort of like the August of 1973, Birmingham started to get bombed, and there was over 30 bombs had gone off in the city, like Army and Navy stores. There was one fatality, believe it or not, with the 30 bombs, because they used to give warnings, and it was all sort of like
coded warning, wasn't it?
Things like that. Yeah. There was a bloke, like a bomb disposal person, somebody called Wilkinson, wasn't it, Julie?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, I can't remember.
Yeah, he got killed defusing a bomb that had been left at New Street.
Yeah, so the bombing situation wasn't new to the city. So I wouldn't say that you would expect what happened. And obviously the whole thing surrounding the Troubles at the time, I know the IRA were trying to attack the British mainland. So really the city was sort of on alert anyway, that they were under attack, weren't they, Pete?
Yeah, it was on alert, but as with a lot of these things, people did become blasé about it, because it was, there's a bomb warning. And of course, as well as the proper bomb warnings, there was a lot of hoaxes that went on around that time as well. And it was a lot of disruption, and people from the initial worry was, I'm going to get on with things. And that had a lot of impact as, moving on up until the 21st of November, 1974 anyway. There's an actual story. You might remember this, Steve, but Blues played a game against Leeds in 1973 around the December time.
Yeah.
And it was at the time like Leeds were the big powerhouse of British football sort of thing. And, we were second. There was over 50,000 people had turned up. Leeds had been on this run. They hadn't lost for 29 games. And it wasn't an all-ticket match. It was just pay at the gate, as it was back then. And they had to shut the gates about 2:15 because it was absolutely rammed. But there was thousands of people locked outside. But what happened is someone had rung through with a bomb threat, So rather than evacuate 50,000 people who were in the ground, they turned around and just said, right, there's been a bomb scare. We're opening the turnstile. They're opening the gates. Anyone who wants to leave can. This is how, and imagine if there had have been something there.
Yeah,
But
it would have been, yeah.
this is how blasé
I think you're right. I think the attitude was probably blasé. And if I remember at the time, kids were sort of making bomb threats so they could get out of school early, hoax bomb calls, stuff like that.
Yeah.
And getting back to this, the game, what had happened was someone had phoned up. It was obviously a hoax, knowing that the gates should be open. So all the people who were outside who hadn't been able to get in came in. And but it was that whole thing, the way, oh, well, yeah, it's another bomb. And people were, I wouldn't say on guard about things, but it wasn't as strict as it should have been, shall we say?
Yeah, I think that, and I think partly really you can't blame the people. You have to blame the authorities, because the police and the football club and everyone else that looks after large congregations of people at any time has a duty of care. And if there's a bomb scare like that, that ground should have been emptied. It doesn't matter what, how blasé, and obviously they made the wrong decision. And luckily for them, nothing went pear-shaped, because if it did, it would have been extremely embarrassing to say the least. Obviously, who knows what might have happened. But if we move on to the actual night, which was the 21st, Julie, how do you recall that? I know you're only young. Can you recall it?
Oh God, I can recall it as if it was yesterday. I remember we were, I was only 11 and we were at home, and we were watching the television, and there was a news flash that came on the ITV that says that there had just been some bombs exploding in Birmingham city centre, and I'll always remember my mum saying bastards. And anyway, we went to bed that night, and the following day, on the Friday, my sister and I were coming home from school, and as we were at the top of the road, because where we lived was at the bottom of a slight hill, around the corner came Mum and our stepfather in the car, and Mum waved at us, and it was very odd. It was just odd, because you wouldn't see Mum and our stepfather out at that time of day. And Jane and I went into the house, and Mum had gone upstairs. I mean, that didn't click at the time, but Mum had gone upstairs, and Frank our stepfather sat us down, and he started to draw the curtains. And I thought, why is he drawing the curtains? I mean, it was, obviously it was getting dark, but it was still relatively light. It was about 3:30. And he said, Maxine was in town last night. We said, yes. And he said, the bombings. And we said, yes. Is she all right? Is she okay? Is she hurt? Is she hurt in any way? And he said, no, she's dead. She was killed. And you can't explain it. You sort of, it's something that I say all the time. I suppose it's shock. You sort of leave your own body and think, I'm watching myself. I mean, obviously we were really, really upset. I mean, we were screaming and that, and something of interest that my sister told me just recently.
You okay?
Yeah. She said,
Take a moment if you need it, Julie. It's fine.
she said, a little while later, she said, I'd said to Mom, "Can I go to my friends?" And I said, "What?" I asked Mom if I could go to my friends down the road. She said, "Yeah," and Mom let you go. She said, "What else could she do?" She said, "You were in a state of shock. You just needed to get out." And that it's so hard to accept that you behave in such a way, but the brain and the body is such a complex system of formulations of the way it reacts to try and protect itself. But that night, my sister had a complete breakdown, and she just screamed and screamed.
Yeah, it must have been an absolutely terrible time for you. And that thing, I think that thing about sort of going into, like continuing life as if nothing's happened for a short space of time is just, it's sort of you accepting what you've just been told, because it must have been absolutely surreal. I mean, how do you accept that? And particularly at 11, I mean, your big sister, it must have been absolutely heartbreaking for you.
Well, it was. She was she was I mean, Mom says we shouldn't put her on a pedestal, but that's difficult not to do, because she was everything that a big sister should be. She was intelligent. She was finishing off her A levels. She had been accepted to study law at Leicester University. She had not long come back from France, picking grapes in the champagne vineyard. I still have a bottle of champagne that she brought back, and that was to improve her French for her A levels. And she was a really forward-thinking girl. I mean, the picture behind me is of Maxine, and that dress she's wearing, she made that herself.
Oh wow, she looks amazing.
And she used to, she made Jane and I our own flared jeans, and everybody was jealous, I think, because it's all flares, wasn't it, in the 70s? And I mean, she was just so talented. She was so kind, and the only reason why she was in the pub that night is because she just moved into this old house with two of my other brothers, Brian and Paul, and she was having a housewarming party. And because very few people could afford a phone back then, and they most certainly couldn't afford a phone, she was having a housewarming party, and she made her own invitations, and she was going to town to meet her, because she just got a job at Miss Selfridge's as well, and it was wage night, because you used to get paid on a Thursday, and she had taken the invitation, so people knew what bus to catch and where to go the following night. And also Jane Davis, who was her friend who had gone to France with her, she was killed as well. She was only 17, and she had got the pictures from their trip in France. So I've got one of the pictures here, actually. I'm looking at it on my mantelpiece. And we were going to go to the party. Mom was going to allow us to go to the party because, she trusted Maxine. She knew nothing would happen to us. And Maxine had bought Jane and I Maxine had bought me with her wages from Miss Selfridge. She bought me these like clogs. So I'll always remember them, those blue clogs. And my mom went ballistic at her. She said, "You need all the money you've got. You need the money for the house. Stop spending your money on these two. They're all right." And Maxine said, "It's my money. I can do what I like." Them, that sort of thing. And 2 days before she was killed, she'd actually come to stay with us, and she stayed the night, and on the morning, this might have been on the Tuesday morning, I was running around, getting ready, because I was always late, because I hated school. And I was running around, and I went to go out the front door, and Mum said, "Aren't you going to say goodbye to Mackie?" And because I said, "Oh, I forgot, because I put the party on Friday." So I went running upstairs, give her a big hug, and I said, "See you Friday, love you." And it was the last time we saw her.
Yeah, very sad. It's important to get, and it's probably painful for you, obviously, to recall it. But I think it's really important to get those personal things, because that's happened to 20 other families,
Well, you see, and this is something I always try and get across, is one family lost two sons.
Yeah, terrible.
The Riley family were originated from Donegal, and the one was married, and his wife was they were really excited about her being pregnant. They were so excited, and the other brother had come to Birmingham to surprise his brother and the family, and so they met in the pub, and they were in the same pub as Maxine, and they were in a tavern in the town.
Yeah.
And I mean, we lost one, they lost two, but the son who was born posthumously, it's destroyed him. It destroyed the family. It's destroyed so many families. When you kill one person, you don't just kill that person.
It's the ripple effect.
It is. It's a domino effect. You destroy a whole set of individuals' lives who continue to live. The loss and the grief of those that have gone, and that have been taken, and for what? And then you've got the other two, who are the youngest, who weren't even in the pubs, and that's
the two young lads.
The two young lads that they were from the West Indies. The youngest was Neil Tommy Marsh. His name wasn't Tommy. Everyone called him Tommy, but he was only 16, and Paul Anthony Davies was only 17, and Paul was a Bruce Lee fan. He was into karate. He was into fitness.
We all were at that time.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Well,
Bruce Lee.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, even today, I suppose. But that they were. He was a fitness fanatic, and even if he was old enough to drink, which he wasn't, he wouldn't have drank, because he just wanted to be fit. And that they were walking past the mulberry bush, and they were killed by flying glass. But the horror story for their families, as with ours, but theirs was, I would say, to a point on a different level of contempt. The police went to tell their parents that they were killed in the bombings, and never ever told them where they were. So Neil Tommy Marsh's mummy, Hilda, who only passed away last year, and what a lady she was. She came over during the Windrush to become a nurse, and she brought him over. She had two sons. She brought her sons over because she missed them, thinking that they'd be safer in this country. I mean, you really couldn't make this stuff up. And the police went and told them that he was killed in the Birmingham pub bombings. Now, Hilda was very pious, terribly religious lady, God bless her. And up until we had the inquest, which we had to fight tooth and nail for in 2019, so 45 years, it took her to find out that her son didn't die in the pub, because they didn't bother to tell her. And so for all these years, she was embarrassed and ashamed that she thought her son was in the pub.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just unforgivable.
It's absolutely, the whole, when you look at it as a whole, it just is unbelievable, really. It's not just unforgivable, it's unbelievable the way that the whole thing was treated. I mean, what was the reaction like in Birmingham generally at the time?
Well, there's another thing we miss is Riley as well, what she had to cope with. Obviously, after it happened, there was a massive backlash against the Irish
Yeah, that's
community.
what we took. Yeah, that's what I'd like to touch on. Yeah,
It split the city. So there's a woman who's lost two of her sons, getting absolutely castigated in the street and whatever. It was horrific. I mean, the demographic of Birmingham at the time as well, like, you know, the huge Irish community, and it'd be very hard to find a Brummie who hasn't got some sort of like Irish.
I have.
You know, I know you only have to go back to my granddad and whatever. You could do that for practically 90%. We've all got Paddy in us somewhere and whatever. But they suffered horrifically, and the split. I mean, we can come on to this a bit later, anyway, sort of thing. But the backlash against the Irish community was the death of two of her sons. On top of all this as well, you know, it's
well. So okay. Oh yeah. Sorry, I'm getting confused. Yeah, I understand now. Yeah, the lady that lost her two sons. Yeah, yeah. And I remember at the time. I think there was a march in Digbeth, wasn't there?
There was, yeah, there was. They were treated vociferously. They were. Some people were beaten up. They were spat at, and I mean, I was only 11 at the time, so none of this obviously touched us as per se, because we were too young to really be aware. But to bring us into the present, as far as the Irish community are concerned, what Brian and I, my brother and I, when we first started campaigning over 12 years or so ago, what we have been trying to do underneath everything else was to try and bring together back that community that we had all those years ago, that was destroyed by these lunatics who came to our city and caused death and destruction. And Professor Gavin Schaefer, who works at University of Birmingham, heard about our plight. Cut a long story short, he put us in touch with Maurice Malone, who's the CEO of the Birmingham Irish Association. And he and Maureen Slattery Marsh and Richard Sinclair are all Irish. And they have helped us to start to build that bridge, to bring together that community that once existed pre 21st of November 1974. And Maurice has worked incredibly hard next to all his staff at the Birmingham Irish Association, who has helped us with Network Rail to have our new tree memorial that is outside New Street Station, which is absolutely fabulous. You know, it's a proper memorial where there are branches, and each branch has the name.
I heard about that this morning, actually. I was talking to someone, yeah, and it really is, and Maurice has stuck with us through thick and thin, and he really is, along with the others, a guardian angel. He's absolutely fantastic. And Mom, we went to Northern Ireland to meet Michelle O'Neill, the leader of Sinn Féin in Northern Ireland, and also Arlene Foster when she was the leader of the DUP some years ago. And Mum told the press then, she said, I hated the Irish, because my mum's going to be 90 in a couple of months. And people understand that. But now she won't have a bad word said about them, because some of our staunchest supporters are Irish or from Northern Ireland, and what's most interesting, from all communities. You know, we've got some pretty staunch Republicans that, you know, that want a republic, but they support us in our plight. Yeah, I mean, you know, the whole point behind that really is that because you're a Republican, it doesn't mean that that you back terrorism. You know,
exactly. Well, they say not in my name. Yeah, and we've the people. What's interesting is whenever we go, we always feel like we've gone home. Now, that might sound odd to a lot of people, but they know what we've been through. Most people in England are fortunate, thank God, to have not experienced what we've been through.
Yeah,
so,
because the troubles reflect on both sides, of course, because
yes.
for every time you can tell them about a bombing on the British mainland, they'll tell you about an attack by British soldiers on civilians in Belfast, you know. So in a way, it brings you together, doesn't it?
Absolutely, yeah, yeah. I mean, they are just, and our supporters over here. I mean, without the I've got to say, without the football fraternity, we would be nowhere. Without Michael Luddy, who's sorry, he's an Aston Villa fan. We would be nowhere. But I would like to pay tribute to Peter Hannon, who has worked endlessly on our behalf. I mean, the support and the push he provides is just unbelievable. And then we've got Michael Sefton. He used to work in Mexico, but fly home and then come and help us collect signatures in town.
I know Seth from many years ago, from when from when he was a little lad. You know, we did live far from each other, and you know, fair play to him. It's great that is.
He's been with us since we started over 12 years ago, and then we've got Dave Taylor, who does a lot for the veterans, and his wife Trish. We've got Peter Taylor, Christopher Taylor, brother Paul Moulton, Colin Lawrence, Gemma and Dave Page, Lorraine O'Brien, Lisa Michelle, and Terry Giblin. Most of them come out and help us raise funds, and there are so many other Birmingham City fans as well. But what is of interest is that two of the others who were killed, which is Lynn Jane Bennett and Jimmy Craig, were both Birmingham City supporters. Now, Lynn Jane Bennett, what's interesting is that she was a season ticket holder with her dad, and after she was killed, her father never ever went back to Birmingham City. He couldn't face going in knowing that the seat next to him wouldn't have his daughter. And so he only died 2 years ago. So over a period of 47 years, he was pre her being killed, they would go to every single match. After she was killed, he never went back ever again to see another match. Jimmy Craig was also a Birmingham City fan. He was also a footballer. Apparently, he was pretty talented. I think he used to play for a certain team. He had some learning needs, but he loved football. And Jimmy Craig was the last one to die of his horrendous injuries because he was so fit. He survived about, I think he died on the 10th of December, something like that. He survived about 17 days. But when Bill, his brother, went looking for him, because they didn't tell their parents about him being potentially involved in the pub bombings, because Lynn and Jimmy, oddly, were both on blind dates, but not with each other.
Yeah.
And you know, there were two others who were there on blind dates who were killed that night. I mean, it's just. But anyway, when Bill knew he'd gone into the city, but they didn't know where, so he went to the hospitals. And Bill, is an ex-West Midlands policeman. He wasn't a policeman at that time, though. And he went to the hospitals, and he went to the accident that's no longer there, and took a picture, and he said, do you have this chap here? Has anyone seen this chap in any of the beds? And he spoke to the nurse, he spoke to the doctor, said, no, I haven't seen anybody like that. And he said, well, do you mind if I go and have a look? so they said, no, go ahead, go and have a look. So he went from bed to bed, ward to ward. And then he came into this one ward in this bed where he saw what remained of a young man, because he was only 33. And his face had been burnt so severely, he got no eyelids, he got no skin on his face. And Bill knew that was his brother Jimmy, and he stayed with him, was with him every day. But his injuries were so horrendous that his body succumbed to the impact of the bomb. Because what people need to understand is, when we were at the inquest in 2019, they had these forensic pathologists who are experts in bomb blast injuries. I mean, I broke down. I broke down. I collapsed in the chair, and I had to leave because it clicked as to Maxine's injuries, the way they described it, and this would relate to Jimmy's injuries. When a bomb explodes, the bomb in the tavern, and because it was a cellar, I mean, how evil is that? How evil! Put a bomb in a cellar. There's only one way in and one way out. And when a bomb explodes, the blast goes for the nearest thing that is liquid, and because our body is predominantly made of liquid blood, that's what it goes for, and that's what it sucks and pulls out. And the bomb blast destroyed his lungs and everything else, and and the blast just ripped off their skin, which is what happened to most of the victims. That happened to Maxine, because when on the Friday, when our stepfather and my mum had come back to tell us, Mum had just come from the morgue, and she had ID'd Maxine. Because my mum had been a nurse and she'd worked in the burns unit, so I suppose in many respects that gave us some experience that nobody would want. But she said that she'd seen because the bodies were so badly burned that they couldn't tell whether they were male or female. And she only recognised Maxine because of the bangles, because she used to love silver bangles, because of the bangles, because her hair had been melted into her face. And my sister and I didn't know this until about 5 years ago, when the police told us that she had lost one of her legs, had been blown off, and the whole of her back had been blown out because she was standing with her back to the bomb, and it had ripped into her back and pulled it out. And
it's dreadful, isn't it? I mean, and that happened obviously numerous times in the two pubs. And I think the other thing is the people that had injuries that survived it,
yes.
I mean, and the trauma that would go with them for the rest of their lives, things that you can't imagine, that probably lives with them forever.
Oh yes, yeah. But I was contacted by one of the survivors. Some of them emigrated to Canada and Australia, strangely enough. Well, not strangely enough, you could understand it. But I was contacted by a chap who was engaged to one of the women who was killed, and he lost his legs. And he wrote to me many years ago and thanked us for what we were doing. He didn't want to be involved, for obvious reasons. Who wants to re-traumatize themselves, especially if you've survived? He thanked us and said, carry on. But I survived and I lost my legs. But one of the other survivors she was a young girl who had just got married, and we only learned about this during the inquest in 2019. She just got married. She'd met a friend. I think her friend died, and she lost both of her legs, but she survived. I mean, how do you move on from that?
Yeah, and also, like, you got to think about people that were working that probably couldn't work again.
Could I
Mothers
just
and fathers, and there
could I
must
just
be 100 stories, that would be heartbreaking to hear.
Yeah, Steve. Yeah, hello.
Yeah, Pete.
Yeah, sorry. It's just a little thing from that. Like, I've worked in the NHS for the last 44 years, right? Basically, all my working life. Nothing to do with anything really, but like my grandmother, she was in the NHS when it first started up. She was a midwife for Wheelie Castle. So she used to go around doing all the like home deliveries. I mean, the only home deliveries you get in Wheelie Castle now have been Uber Eats and pizzas. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But, so between us, we've plus my brother worked in the ENT for a few. We've done the whole stint of the NHS, all its existence. Now, the trust where I'm working at the moment, they've got their own designated PR department, and bless them, they do such really, really good work, and they're for different sort of like histories and diversities and whatever. But I've been in touch with them the last 3 years, and I'll keep on until I actually get proper answers to this. And I've said, well, you should highlight what happened that night, because some of the work and something that was faced by the first responders, the emergency services, the nurses, the doctors who had to deal with stuff that they everyone was all. There was some absolutely heroic stuff went on that night with the doctors and the nurses, and kept on and has been going on ever since.
And the taxi driver.
They haven't wanted to know. It's like it's brushed under the. We can celebrate everything else apart from that, and it's so frustrating and annoying. But knowing what I know, it's not a surprise why it's brushed under the carpet. But that's for another bit of the podcast, I suppose. But
yeah, well, I mean, sort of moving on from what happened at the night and the obvious traumas and stuff that it's caused over the years, because it has done. There's no doubt about the aftermath of it must have been terrible. So on the initial investigations, from what I understand, they actually arrested the 6 men that were eventually convicted of the bombings fairly quickly, didn't they?
Yeah, but they knew that most of them hadn't had anything to do with it. That we could talk about this for a week.
Another 6 lives affected.
Yeah, but to put it into a synopsis, they knew they hadn't done it, and what I mean, can you imagine being like Paddy Hill, for instance? He's one of our staunchest supporters. He telephoned me just a couple of weeks ago, strangely enough, bless him. Imagine going to prison for a crime you didn't commit, and knowing, get this, that when you were in court, you were also in court with the real 5 who were involved, because that's exactly what took place in the beginning in 1975.
Well, how were the 5 there?
Well, they were all pulled in together,
okay.
And they were charged. The 6 were charged, and the 5 were let out. But one of the 5 not the 6, one of the 5. I can't remember what his name was. I think his name was James something.
Kelly, wasn't it? Well, he had an alias, didn't he? Like
That's
Kelly
it,
or
yes, exactly. Yes, he'd had an alias. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Thank you, Peter. Yes. And when they arrested him, the first thing he said was, "Get me the assistant chief constable." I can't. Can you remember what his name was, Peter? I can't remember what his name was. Anyway,
Morris, it wasn't Morris Book, was it?
yes, it was. Well done. Yes, he said. He said, "Get me Morris Book." The assistant chief constable, he'll know who I am. Go and get, and they were like, "We're not getting the assistant chief constable for you." He said, "Go and get these." I'm not saying anything, because as we've learned through so much, that he had infiltrated the IRA sections in Birmingham. Kelly, that was it. James Kelly, his name was. But which was an alias, and he had, I think it was him who allegedly had served in the British Army, had gone AWOL, and decided to become disenfranchised with the British, and decided to join the IRA. But as soon as he was captured, the first person he asked for was the assistant chief constable, and he didn't do any time. And to my knowledge, you'd have to speak to Luddy about this, because he's read so much stuff. But the one fella, oh God, what's his name? Oh my God, he's definitely one of the ones who was involved in making the bombs. I can't remember his name, sorry, but he refused to acknowledge the court, and the judge complimented him on it and says, "You know, you were a real good soldier." You know, and you're thinking, and this is in Britain. Anyway, some of them were sent down for 10 years for having explosives and all that, but the others just walked. So the real 5 were in court at the same time as the 6, but the 6 went down for it, even though they had nothing to do with it.
So you're surmising then that the police knew all along who the actual 5 were, and they just...
Oh, no, we're not surmising.
We know.
You know.
Yeah. And so the 6 that were actually convicted then were just used by the authorities to get rid of the investigation, sort of.
Well, you see, it's such a complex story. There is, I keep being told I should write a book, but where would you start? You know, and I'm not a writer.
I get Pete to do it.
Yeah, actually, he's fantastic at writing. He's brilliant.
I'm a waffler. Luddy's the man.
Yeah, Luddy's the man. Yeah, he is. But oh God, what was I going to say? I forgot what I was going to say. Sorry.
Yeah, so we were talking about them being convicted with the police knowing that they hadn't.
Oh yeah. It's in 1974. The Home Secretary then was Roy Jenkins. Now, Roy Jenkins was also a Birmingham MP.
I remember him, yeah.
I don't know, he was in an MP for Erdington or whatever, but he was the Home Secretary. And the government were trying to bring in a law called the Terrorism Act of 1974. And Roy Jenkins refused to sign it because he thought it was too draconian. Because what it meant was you could arrest somebody that you suspected of being involved in terrorism without charge for as long as you like. And he refused to sign it. The Birmingham pub bombings occurred. He signed it the very next day. And it came into law within a week. Now, if that doesn't scream conspiracy, it isn't. And collusion and complicity, which it is, then nothing will. Why? I mean, I have contacts who have contacts across all communities in Ireland and Northern Ireland, particularly Republican, and a pretty well-known Republican I don't know them, and I don't know who said it, but they're staunch Republicans. They don't agree with terrorism, but they said, why bomb Birmingham? Why bomb a city that has no regiments, has no soldiers, and no connection to the military in any way whatsoever? Why bomb a city like Birmingham?
Do you think it was perhaps just logistically easy to do or something? Or do you even think, I mean, I don't know.
No. The more we learn, the more, in fact, our worst fears have come to bear, because with this terrorism act, I mean, there are things that we know that I can't tell you, and honestly, anyway.
So, Julie, while we're thinking about it, I mean, was there an IRA cell in Birmingham?
Oh God, yes, there was loads of them. Yeah, there was loads of them. Yeah, I mean, I live down the road from a pub that used to, where Paddy and his mates used to go collecting.
Yeah. So really, then, as I know it, the individual cells sort of operate on their own, so that if they're caught, no one else knows about it.
Well, no. We've learned that isn't actually the case. That they all had someone to answer to in Ireland, and Northern Ireland. They all had someone to answer to. However, if what we're told is to be believed, then the 5 who actually committed this cowardly act, they took it upon themselves to commit this crime without it being sanctioned by anybody at all, because that's what they that's what I'm terrible with names. Somebody else who I was interviewed on Radio 4 with, he was an ex-IRA commander, and believe it or not, he's a solicitor now. He's done time, for God's sake, and he's a solicitor now, and he was part of some of the bombings.
Couldn't make it up, could you?
And you couldn't. And he tried to say that they committed this without any sanctions or any okay from the top IRA bosses, and by doing so, they could have been shot in the head for it, but none of them were. Well, how odd is that? And he tried to claim that no civilians were meant to get hurt, and I said to him on Radio 4, this was in 2016, this was. And I said to him, I've never heard such a load of rubbish in all my life. You're telling me that no civilians were meant to get hurt when they were planning, they were preparing, building and planting bombs in cellars and in another pub, busy on a Thursday night, and you're telling me no civilian, and every one of them was a civilian.
I heard, and I may be wrong, I don't know, that the excuse was that they used a coded message to warn them about the bombings, and it never got.
Yeah, they claimed that all the phone boxes were broken down. Now, for those, for your listeners who will be listening to this who are of our age, will know, and if they lived in Birmingham, will know that back then, obviously, there were no mobile phones. They hadn't even been heard of on Star Trek, and on every street corner, there was a telephone. Every street corner. In fact, around the corner from where the tavern was, there were 7 phone boxes in a row on the ramp, below the ramp. And then there were phone boxes positioned everywhere. But apparently they got on the bus, and the one decided to get off down near Digbeth to see if he could find another phone. And by the time he rang the Birmingham Post and Mail, it was too late. They got like 10 minutes to try and get the message across. But then you see, you've got the idiocy of the police. I mean, we could go on and on and on about everything that could have gone wrong did go wrong. But the idiocy of the police, get this, once they got the phone call from the Birmingham Post and Mail, there was a police officer who went from the Digbeth police station, and he could have walked there in 5 minutes because it was a different, and where did he go? He went into the ball ring to go and look. Get this, he was looking for the bomb. Who in their right mind would go looking for a bomb? You should be emptying the place out. And our KC in the inquest said to this one ex-copper, he said, well, why didn't someone go round to the mulberry bush, because it's connected, you know, the mulberry bush was connected to the
rotunda.
The rotunda. And he said, well, nobody thought of it. And he said, well, our KC said, how long do you think it would have took to go from the rotunda to the mulberry bush? He said, 5 seconds. He said 5 seconds. Imagine all those lives could have been saved in those 5 seconds. I mean, you really couldn't make this stuff up. But on top of that, in the inquest, we also discovered, have a guess how many police were in the whole of Birmingham that night? In the whole of Birmingham, have a guess how many police there were?
You'd have to go on.
15.
That's ridiculous, isn't it?
Because there was 1,200 at Elmdon Airport, because the guy who blew himself up with the bomb in Coventry, they thought it was going to kick off there, and there were only like 80 people there, but they got 1,200 coppers. And just down the road, it was a Thursday night, so last Thursday of the month, where the top coppers and people like to gather, they were only down the road in the hotel down the road, and none of them came out to the bombings. Honestly, you couldn't make this stuff up.
No, and I think it's, you know, it's one of those things that you literally couldn't make up, and that's why I think sometimes, you know, it's like this now. I know you've got the justice group, and I think sometimes people just need reminding about what happened, because I don't think enough people know, or if they sort of know, they forget. It doesn't have a high enough profile, and I know that. Sorry, Pete.
Sorry, mate. Yeah. So I just want to take it back a bit to after the bombs had gone off on the Thursday night. I'm taking it to a football level simply because a lot of people on this podcast would relate more to the football side of it. You know, this devastation had gone off on the Thursday night. On the Saturday, Villa played at home to Portsmouth. That, you know, everything went on as per normal. Blues, we played away at Tottenham on the Saturday. None of these black armbands, minute silence or whatever. In fact, anyone who'd actually been to White Hart Lane in the 70s will tell you it weren't the nicest place to go anyway. But the Blues fans that were in the Park Lane there, and they got surrounded by all load of Tottenham fans, and all the Tottenham fans are like singing "Blow Up Your Bums," and it all kicked off and everything. You just could not make it up. It was almost like, you know, oh well, tough, carry on. I thought. You know, I mean, after the Manchester bombings and whatever, there was all this big Manchester B, and they'll put something on the shirts and everything. I know it's a different sort of like era and whatever, but never have our clubs.
But that's the thing.
Acknowledged
anything. I think that's the thing. You know, I think the whole point, the whole thing is that, and it's never too late to acknowledge it. Because you haven't done it doesn't mean that you can't put it right.
No, like to say, we had the Lord Mayor's game 3 weeks afterwards and whatever, but then sort of like, you know, life moves on for those lucky enough to still have a life. It moves on, and once the Birmingham Six had been arrested, a lot of us, like you say, we weren't all savvy to reading newspapers and avidly watching news and whatever. It was almost like, for a lot of people, that the line was drawn then. Oh, well, the bastards are in prison. They should have been flipping hung and whatever. That's it. It's finished with. Within 4 years, by the time I'm flipping 18 and whatever, I'm back and I'm drinking in what it was the now called the roundabout and whatever.
Oh, yeah.
And we used to run football coaches from there. Everything went on. There was people who used to drink in there that was in there, but it wasn't talked about. Obviously, it's not. Things went on, and as far as like with the Justice for 21 thing went on, it had been up and running for 4 years before I even got involved. I was your archetypal, and I hate to pigeonhole Brummies as such, but we'll have a moan and we'll carry on. You hear little bits. Oh yeah, there's this group. Oh, it's terrible. But but in your head you're thinking, oh well, there's a reason the police don't go looking for anybody else. It's because they know that it's the six and they've got let out on a technicality. That's as much as you wanted to think. It was only through perseverance of the likes of there was a lad called Pete Mace, and obviously Seth that I knew, and George from down the Blues, who were involved with Justice for 21, that told me to sort of like start to have a look at. By this time I'd actually got a mobile phone, but I must have been the last person in Birmingham to actually have a mobile phone, and started Googling things up and looking at things. So there's always hope for me that if someone like me would suddenly find out stuff, that there's other people like me who will. It's never too late to want to try and get yourself involved in this. Now, one thing you got to say about the people of Liverpool is with the Justice for Hillsborough and wherever, that city united and got completely behind it. I hate to say it, but Birmingham, apart from the football community, which is sort of like, Julie will tell you, it's not, not just Blues and Villa or whatever. It is a cross-country thing with football lads who've got involved in it. But as a city, Birmingham, I'm sorry, it absolutely. When I actually went, the first time I actually went trying to get signatures for something into the city, I could not believe how many people either don't know, don't care, walk past. Julie's used to having doors slammed in her face and everything. Me, who was actually new to it, was a new thing to me. The likes of Seth and Luddy and whatever, that they knew what the score was. I didn't. I'd gone along, and I felt like grabbing hold of people, saying, "What is the matter? Why can't you come and sign this thing? What, don't you know?" And they. Well, Julie could tell you more than me, but
I think that the point of doing something like this is to try and get it over to the wider community in using social media, which is probably and definitely a lot more powerful than getting signatures. That's what it's about. And like our group, comparatively small group of like 7,000 people. But I've been talking to a few of my Villa mates as well, and I'm sure people watching this cast now on the Blues, on the project page, won't worry at all about the fact that we're going to involve Villa with this. But my friend Carl Court, who was a former national, do you know Carl?
Yeah.
So I was talking to Carl last night, and he was saying that, I've got a few contacts to pass the podcast on to, because it would be nice to get it onto Villa groups and to get it onto other Blues groups. I think that's 7,000, 10,000 on another one, 10,000 on another one. The Villa have got big groups, It's like you were saying, Julie, the 40,000 people in Villa Park, if they all gave you £1, you wouldn't have to worry about it,
Absolutely. I mean, it's I've got to say that the football fraternity, Aston Villa, Birmingham City, West Bromwich Albion, the Wolves, Millwall, the Jam Tarts up and the Rangers fans. I mean, there are just at Southampton, Hales Owen, Stourbridge. George Weir, and Paul McNeil as well. Just to give you an insight, whenever we could, because we're going to be collecting outside Birmingham City, close to the shop, just down the way from the shop this Saturday. If anybody wants to come and buy a wristband from us, they're only £1 or one of these.
Anyone wants a t-shirt? There we go.
Or a
Look.
t-shirt, they're 13, or a patch like this you can sew on, or a pin badge. People are just so kind. And when I tell Mum, because you know, for decades Mum always said nobody cares, nobody gives a toss, they don't give a toss. But Brian and I are so pleased that we've proved her wrong, because they do give a toss. And people like Pete and Luddy and Seth and so many fantastic individuals have given their hearts and their souls to us, to people they never knew, they never lost, but their
Well, we've
heart
had
and soul runs through that, their love for our loved ones. And something I just need to tell you, that for my brother Brian, who is the eldest, he is, and Pete will tell you this, he's traumatized and has been since it happened, because he was the last one to see her alive. Because that night, he asked Maxine to iron a shirt for him, and he said, if you iron my shirt, I'll drop you into town, because he knew that she was going into town. Cut a long story short, obviously she ironed his shirt for him, and he dropped her off outside, and he continues to believe
Circumstances.
he took her to her death.
Yeah, he obviously didn't, you know, but it's what's
Yeah,
in
but
your
you
mind.
can't. Yeah, and he is traumatized,
Yeah.
and he's going to be there on Saturday. I spoke to him this morning actually, and he said he's going to be there. And if anyone speaks to him, you'll know, you can see it. And when you it's on his face, it's in everything, and his behavior.
We need to get, you know, we need to get these collections done and get, you know, and get some proper sort of money for them. And I know the money is to be used for legal reasons, you know, and to help to help the group get justice. And like Villa Park next week, you know, at home.
Yeah, on the 12th.
Outside the Holt, aren't you?
Yeah, outside the Holt pub. Yeah, on Sunday the 12th. Yes. Yeah, we'll be there selling their claret and blue t-shirts as well, and the wristbands and everything else, with Steve Manton and so many other great people.
You go further afield than that.
Sorry, Steve. Yeah. I just need to give a shout out to, when we're on about football people. There's a couple of lads. One's a Tottenham fan called Glenn Randall.
Oh yes.
And there's a Leeds fan called Ian Williams. They just did a walk. Yes. Well, Julie will tell you, yeah.
Well, I was going to mention them. I was going to leave them till last. But to answer your last question, Steve, yes, we do. We've gone and collected at West Bromwich Albion. Me and Brian have been to Millwall with Mark Rowley's, otherwise known as, who collected us, and with Luddy, and we went collecting it. And that was some years ago. And we had a lovely reception there. And in Bromley, the people in the pubs gave us money in the buckets. You know, people were just so incredibly kind. But I was going to talk about these two incredible individuals before we ended, and that's Glenn Randall. He's a Spurs fan, and Ian Williams is a Leeds fan. Glenn lives in London, and Ian lives in Preston, and they have just completed a walk from Birmingham to Belfast, where they take time off work, annual leave, and they raise the money this year for their accommodation and their food and their travel expenses. They walked from Birmingham, they took the canal routes all the way to Liverpool, where they then took a flight to Belfast and then walked into Belfast City Council, their Belfast official hall, where they were received by some of the lovely councillors there to raise money and to raise our profile. Now, this is the third time that Ian has done this walk. 2 years ago, there were three of them. There was Glenn, Darren, and Ian. They walked from Birmingham to London, but they, instead of walking 100 miles, I think they ended up doing 170 because something to do with his name's Gok, Darren. The Google map they were using took them on the wrong routes and all sorts of things. They got trench foot. Glenn lost all of his toenails afterwards. I mean, the blisters and everything. I mean, they really suffered. But on that walk, they helped to raise over £5,000 for us. On this walk, they're quite disappointed. And we feel for them because they've done it for us, and they've raised just over 3,000, and they thought that they'd be able to beat their 5,000 crowdfund, but it's still open. The crowdfund link is still open, and then in 2018, Ian first came up because he's ex-military, he's ex-army, is Ian. He walked on his own from Preston to Birmingham, bless him, and he raised over £2,000 for us back then. You know, these are, I mean, these are incredible feats of achievements, yeah. of working men who take time out to give so much of themselves. And how is it possible to thank them?
There's thousands of people out there that would be like that, you know, and I think awareness is the thing. And I don't know about thanking them. I would think thanking them would be the fact that, you know, they're raising the money, you know. I mean, they obviously do it because they want to do it, you know. And I think, I mean, like what we're doing now, we know the exposure we've got on the BCFC project site, but if we can share this into other sites, doesn't matter which football club it is, people can do fundraisers themselves. It's not impossible. It doesn't matter, you know, if it's 500 quid here and there, you know, that's the sort of thing that we need. Like, that's stacking up different little things. And also, I mean, the other thing that we wanted to look at, and obviously anyone that has any ideas for fundraisers, then get in touch with any of us, you know, any of the three of us, or anyone else that is involved with the project, because those are the things that are going to raise awareness. And we know with the football fraternity particularly, they're going to be very, very generous with this kind of thing. No doubt about that.
Well, I can't remember. I can't remember which fan it was, but he's a Scottish fan, and I don't know whether he was Hearts Midlothian, a Jam Tarts fan, or whether he was a Rangers fan. But some years ago, and I'll never forget it, because when I saw the money was in the bank, I just burst out crying. I couldn't believe it. This one fella, it's just so heart-rending. He went into a pub in Scotland. I don't know where it was. He went into a pub and he said, "Listen, I'm here for the Birmingham pub bombing families, and I want your bloody change in this glass." And he took around pint glasses, and in a couple of hours, he raised £500 for us.
Amazing, isn't it?
I mean, it's just honestly, and we have supporters in Ireland who send me checks, and I say, please don't send me money. You know, the cost of living, because we used to go collecting quite a bit more, didn't we, Pete? But because of the cost of living, because we don't want people to be out of pocket, because that's why we sell our merchandise so cheap. You know, people tell me, you're selling your t-shirts too cheap, and I say, but we don't want to. We're not about ripping people off. If we make a bit of money, that helps. But
I don't think it's
out there.
It's not. You know, sorry, go on, Julie. I'm sorry.
You know, getting the message out there that there's a T-shirt, and Pete's wearing it, and it's got all the names of the 21 on the back.
Yeah.
And
those will be on sale on Saturday, won't they?
I don't know whether you can see that, but we've put Neil Tommy Marsh's name on the bottom out of respect for him being the youngest to a bit, because he was still a child.
Yeah.
I mean,
and obviously the ones that you do at the Villa are claret, aren't they? And
yes,
They're not blue, because they wouldn't like that.
And people need to understand that we're not a business. I do all this in my own time. I don't get paid for it. I don't want to get paid for it. That's why we're not a charity. We refuse to be a charity for two reasons. One, and I know this is going to sound contradictory, but we actually don't want anything to do with money. But the reason why we have to go collecting is because the legal aid in England and Wales have refused us over 14 times. When you've got people who, like Shamina Begum, who's fighting to get her British citizenship back, for instance, she's getting all this legal aid. You got people who are claiming asylum, they get the legal aid. And our loved ones cannot get legal aid. Got nothing against people who want asylum seekers. That isn't the point I'm making. The point is, if you give it to one, you've got to give it to all, and that's really important. And that's why we have to go out on the street to go begging for pennies, because the government will not provide us with the very thing that they're meant to represent us for.
Yeah,
and get this.
I mean, I don't know. I don't know enough about your group, but I presume that you've done things like petition the government and stuff, with different people. And
listen, our legal team have done everything. This is seriously to put things into another perspective for you as to what we're up against. Some people may be aware of what is known as the Legacy Bill. It's called the Northern Ireland Troubles Legacy and Reconciliation Bill. Now, this bill has just been implemented. Literally, it got royal assent in October, I think it was, or at the end of September, I can't remember. Now, what this bill does, in essence, it gives the terrorists amnesty. Literally, gives them amnesty. So you can come to any of our cities, kill with impunity, and no, nothing will happen to you, which is exactly what has happened with this bill. And this Conservative government have pushed this through. Keir Starmer and Hilary Benn, the new Shadow Secretary of State for Northern Ireland, have both said that if they get into power, they will revoke it. Now, I am not being political. We've always stayed above the political fray because we've always sought cross-party support. But this legacy bill is obscene in the extreme. It breaks every common law of the United Kingdom and the human rights laws. And we are fighting to have a statutory public inquiry, which is what we've been fighting for years. And the government have been playing us for 10 years. All right. Now, if they can give a statutory public inquiry to the Hillsborough families,
I was just thinking that. Yeah.
If they can give it to the Grenfell families only had to wait 12 months. God bless them, the Manchester Arena bombing families. God bless them. I mean, MI5 admits responsibility for not doing more. They actually admitted it, and they only had to wait 18 months for a statutory public inquiry. We're going to be 50 years next year, and we still are waiting for just a decision on a statutory public inquiry, which we don't think they'll give, because this legacy bill, and this is the point I want to get across, do not be in any way misled or believe what the mainstream media are telling you, because they haven't covered this. Because I ripped into the BBC a couple of months ago on live on their morning show, on the BBC morning show, and said, why aren't you covering about this legacy bill? Because this legacy bill is about giving the terrorists amnesty. And you know why they want to give them amnesty? Because of the British collusion and complicity during the years of all the troubles, where they quite literally had blood on their hands. Because this legacy bill means that they can control the narrative, because they have the keys to the doors of the majority of the questions that the families have, and the British government have the answers to those questions. But they don't want them to have all of the answers, because by giving us the answers means that it will prove that there was collusion and complicity. Now, for those who are thinking I'm a conspiracy theorist, just to substantiate my point as being as factual and as truthful as it is, look up the name Steak Knife, as in a steak knife. That was his code name by MI5 and MI6. He was a top IRA commander who was in charge, get this, honestly, you couldn't make this stuff up. He was in charge of torturing and then executing known touts, what they call touts, who the IRA thought were blabbing to the British, to MI5, that they thought that they were telling them their secrets. He was the IRA's top touting squatter. He would nut them, he would torture them and then kill them. But he was a double agent for MI5 and MI6. And a lot of the murders he committed with the full acquiescence of MI5 and MI6. Look it up, it's all there.
And it's good, you know, it's good to...
Sorry, Matt.
Sorry.
One thing I need to say about this legacy bill. Now, there's one thing you'd think, as Birmingham MPs especially, with what's gone on in our city,
where are
they would all be shouting from the rooftops about how bad this bill is and whatever. Well, we had out of the 12 Birmingham MPs, we had 4 abstain, which is basically as bad as saying yes.
Yeah, because we know the majority is going to go.
My MP for Northfield in Birmingham is a bloke called Gary Sambrook. Now, he actually voted for this bill. Now, I hope people remember that name in Northfield when it comes to election time. It's been, you know, it's not as if he hasn't been told. He's the most two-faced person in the world, and he's actually voted and laughed in the face, spat in the face, call it what you like, to Birmingham people. And I'm sorry, the only language these people know is a cross on the election thing. Do not vote for this bloke. He's an enemy of the people of Birmingham. I'm sorry, Steve, I had to just say that.
And also, just to support what Pete's just said about Gary Sambrook, one of our other supporters, Ginge, Matt Glover, brilliant. What a absolute super guy. What he's done for us is just unbelievable. Gary Sambrook is also his MP, and Matt had a meeting with him when he first come into power as an MP, and Matt said to him, "You will you be voting for this legacy bill?" And he told Matt, "No, I won't." So that's who we're dealing with.
Yeah.
Double-eyed.
Yeah, duplicity.
Speaking with forked tongue, let's say.
All right. Well, you know, all of the people that are probably going to listen to this, there are going to be people that will have ideas for things that, you know, will perhaps be able to help in some way. And hopefully by raising, you know, just raising it again. And what I think we should do is perhaps do another one and just keep it up there. You know, we'll try and get this shared as much as we can. I know, like Beck's going to do. Beck's brilliant. She's going to do some stuff. We're going to go to the Blues to try and get that plaque done. I've had all the emails from Pete, and Beck put them all together last night chronologically. And you've seen them, Pete, didn't you? Well, it looks awful. You know, it really does. The club have basically just fobbed you off. Simple as that. It's just the actual chronological list of those emails, who they're from, who responded, and that went from at one point, I think it went from February till July or August, and they hadn't responded at all. That's off the top of my head. There's a big gap because Beck noticed it straight away, you know, and I think that needs addressing. And if the club, who you know, and we know the Arthur thing, you know, with baby Arthur, and it's absolutely fantastic what they did for him, and it's heartbreaking to hear that story. But if they can't put a plaque up somewhere in St Andrews where they've just put all the new standing areas and they're completely, like, you know, rebuilding half of the ground, If they can't find somewhere to put a plaque up, then I'm ashamed of my club. And talking to Carl as well, it's the same at Villa. You know, Villa haven't got anything. I believe that they had a match or something. I can't remember. I think that's right. But there's nothing at Villa Park. I mean, these are the two big city clubs, and there's nothing in there to remember those people. There would have been some people with Villa connections there as well. There would have been some people with Wolves connections and Albion connections, definitely, you know. And I know plaques don't bring people back, but it's respect.
Well, Paul Anthony Davies, who was the 17-year-old with Tommy walking past the mulberry bush, his son, who was born after he was killed.
Yeah,
he was born posthumously. So, whose name is Paul. He never got to know his dad. He's an avid Aston Villa fan. Yeah. Avid Aston Villa fan, and he's there all the time. So that you are right. There are definite links there.
Yeah, and I know, you know, listen, the Blues Villa thing, whatever, it doesn't come into it.
No, it doesn't. And that's the beauty about our campaign, is that where the football fraternity is concerned, there is no rivalry, there is no colour, there is no politics, there is no religion.
And the Villa fans are going to feel
together. It's so heartwarming, and people are so incredibly kind, and those who give always give.
Yeah.
But like you say, if everybody could give a pound, if everybody could just give a pound, everybody, imagine.
Steve, can I just get back to this plaque for 1 minute, please?
Yeah.
Yes, sorry. Basically, when I'd sort of like came up with the idea, I wasn't expecting my own football club to treat our 21 with the contempt that they have, because it's what they have done. It's that Julie and all the 21 they've had, from prime ministers, home secretaries, MPs, say one thing and do another. The last thing I ever thought was that my own football club that carries the city's name would be turning around saying, yes, we're going to do something. Yes, we're going to do this. 2 years down the line, they haven't done a thing. They've gone back on their word. These people do not deserve doors shut in their faces, least of all by my own football club.
Yeah. And it's the city, you know. I mean, to be honest, it shouldn't just be the two Blues supporters that are named. It should be every one of the 21.
Yeah.
Because it isn't just about who you support. It's about 21 people that were murdered in our city.
Yes.
You know,
absolutely.
Yeah, and it comes down to people. I think you said yesterday, Pete, you know, that Ian Dutton's been great, and who's the other lad that we've been in contact with?
Jake Malbasser.
Yeah, Jake Malbasser. I mean, Jake, to be honest, is pretty good in general. You know, we've had some dealings recently when we emailed Ian Dutton about stuff, and we hear nothing. I emailed Jake to shake it up, and he come back and said, well, Ian's been on holiday, he hasn't got back. Well, hasn't the guy got like an away from business email or something, you know? And those sort of excuses become a bit weak. I know they're busy people. I know they've probably got a lot of people emailing them and whatever. But things like this, when they're put on the back burner and moved aside, it speaks volumes, you know. And Nigel can't be involved with the community, and here's a great chance.
I can't help but think that they're kicking the can further down the line because they're being told to from somebody, rather than just say, we can't do it. To keep people hanging on, making deadlines, breaking them. 2 years this has been going on, 18 months. There's a reason why. And Julie would know more about this than me, that certain doors get shut.
Go on, Julie.
As soon as it sort of mentions the Birmingham pub bombings, it's the same with, like I was saying earlier about with the hospital, not wanting to commemorate the brilliant work of their things, but they'll do it for everything else. There is a reason why
there's a bigger thing. There's a bigger thing than people having reasons. There's a bigger thing than people wanting to hide things. And the bigger thing is the majority of us people. You know, we've got a very big city with over 2 million people in it. You know, it doesn't matter what they want to say or what they don't want to say, because if they don't want to say it, we'll say it for them. If they don't want to put a plaque up, fine, but let's embarrass them about it. Let's bring it out into the open and say, you know what? If you haven't got the balls to put a plaque up, we're going to tell you you haven't got them.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Can I just say, with reference to our logo, it is trademarked.
Yeah.
So if anybody has any ideas, they need to get permission.
Okay.
We don't let anyone just run riot with it, because it's trademarked for obvious reasons. Because you know, not only would it be extremely sad if somebody tried to make, well, I know that somebody's tried to make money out of Hillsborough, because I know some of the Hillsborough families, and you know, the one was telling me that they sued the one fella. I think he's doing time now, actually. So and to me, that's, I can't believe how someone would try and make money on the back of other people's. To me, it's beyond. I mean, it's
the lowest of the low.
Yeah, absolutely. But that's why we trademarked it, is to protect it, and in a way we're glad that we did do it. But we've been very fortunate, like that, touch wood. But I just thought I'd say that. But if anybody has any ideas to help us, that seriously it'd be more than welcome to be accepted. I don't have a Facebook page as per se. Our Facebook page is under my sister's name, Maxine Hambleton. Or we do have a group one. It's a private group if you want to join. It's called Justice for the 21. If you go on and try and track it down, there's some questions you've got to ask that you have to be polite and this, that and the other. I don't run it. Some of our supporters run it. You see, our supporters are so good. And I mean, there are so many people to thank, and to, I mean, we're just so fortunate in so many ways. But if
I would
help
say,
raise our profile and help us raise as much money as possible, that would be superb.
And I would say, you know, to everyone that watches this, share it. You know, like I know, for instance, Carl, you know, Carl at the Villa fan, you know, like I think Carl Court. I'm going to send it to Carl. Carl's going to put it out to a few groups. And then all we need then is a few other people to put it out to a few other groups. You know, it's only to make people aware. It doesn't, you know, it doesn't matter that it started with us as a Birmingham City group, you know, the project. It doesn't matter. All it needs is people's awareness to be raised. And then there'll be so many people that will have ideas and thoughts that, you know, we may get something that is absolutely brilliant that no one's thought of, that suddenly raises it. Or even things like letters to MPs. You know, I know it's a bit of an old sort of thing, write to your MP, but those sort of things can work sometimes. And the other thing for the Blues and Villa fans with regard to these plaques, email the club, just email them. Jake Malbassa, there's going to be a few at the Villa, you know, Ian Dutton. These people need to be made aware that this, you know, they can't just walk over us, because this is a thing that's happened to our city. And I know football and a lot of the owners, they're not really involved in the city, but Gary Cook is a Birmingham City supporter. He is the CEO. You know, Ian Dutton apparently is a Birmingham City supporter. We've got thousands and thousands of supporters that aren't going to be happy if our club turns our back on what happened in 1974. It's not good, is it?
Thank you, Steve.
No, yes, thank you so much. Thank you so much for inviting us onto your pod. And once again, thank you, Peter, for everything you've been doing.
Yeah, Pete, brilliant. Pete actually got us to do this, really, you know, because Pete was talking to me, and then we had the idea of doing this. And to be honest, Julie, you know, you and Pete are absolutely fantastic. I mean, the story you've told this morning is heartrending, and it's awful. And people need to listen to it and understand exactly what happened. And more importantly, what's still happening now. It's not as if this is something that happened in the past. You know, this is continuing to happen, and we need to stop it somehow.
Yes.
So if anyone has ideas and they can't get in touch with Julie or Pete, you can always come through the group. You know, Birmingham BCFC, the project. You know, that's our Facebook group. Come to us. We can pass stuff on to Julie and Pete. Or if you have any other connections, you know, anything at all that can help to raise the money. And don't forget, this Saturday, 1:30 by the Blues Shop at St Andrews. Bring your spare change, buy a shirt. I think Beck's going to pop up for an hour as well, I think, which would be great. So you can say hello to her. And then next Saturday, I think it's Saturday. Is it the Fulham game or is it Sunday?
It's Sunday at Aston Villa on the 12th, I think it is.
Yeah, and that's
home game at Aston Villa.
that
But this Saturday, this Saturday, I think we're going to be there from about 12:30.
all right.
Yeah, by the not outside the BCFC shop, but just down from there.
They'll find you.
Yeah, yeah.
One more shout out, sorry. And just to let you know, anyone who's going up on Anthony Routley's coaches up to Sunderland next week, I shall be up the route beforehand, before you all set off. I'll have some merchandise for you there for anyone who's going up and wants to buy something as well. Anthony's brilliant. He's a big supporter of Justice for 21.
Yes, he is, yes. Thank you, Anthony. Yes.
He's a good salesman, he's Anthony, so fingers crossed.
I remember that.
I'd just like to say thank you to Kevin Gormley as well. He lives in Spain now, actually. His wife, yeah.
I think he's down south.
And what he's done for us as well. But there are so many people out there. You know, they've had tattoos put of our logo on their legs or on their bodies, and West Bromwich Albion fans like Dawn Garbis and John Fellows and another John and Kirsty. They're going to get married this year. I mean, there are so many. If I've forgotten you, please know that we're thankful to every one of you.
I don't think people do it for recognition, do they? They do it.
I know, but
it's in the heart.
But to us, every single person makes such a huge impact on us personally. And my mum is always truly humbled. I mean, you'd have to meet Mum. She's proper old school. She was evacuated in the Second World War. She's coming up to 90, and she's a hardened bugger. But my brother describes it like an egg. As soon as you break through the shell, she'll fall apart, sort of thing.
Yeah.
And
well, you have to give her our love.
I will.
Tell her we've been talking about her.
Told her about the podcast, and she just says, you know, how do you thank people? But she wrote a letter, I think it was earlier this year, that was printed in the Birmingham Mail, to thank everybody for what they do for us.
That's brilliant. You know, and obviously people are indebted to people like you as well, Julie and Pete, you know, because a lot of people haven't got the wherewithal to bring this up to the surface, and they don't know how to try and attack the problem, you know. And some people, you know, you got 21 families, and really you represented an awful lot of people. It isn't just the 21 people that died, it's all of the people that are involved with it. And I think you and Pete do an absolutely amazing job, as well as everyone else, you know. I mean, everyone that's involved with it is great, but I think let's just try and just take it up to the next step. And there's a lot of people, a lot of us now, that can try and do something about this. Let's get the podcast shared. Let's get the word out there. But we won't let it go off the board. We won't forget it. You know, another couple of weeks, we'll get together, we'll talk again. And there's a million things we can talk about regarding this, isn't there?
We don't turn our backs on our football teams. And the last thing that we'd ever do is turn our backs on our 21. We're here for the long haul.
Good.
And that goes for every football club as well, this does.
That's brilliant. And Julie and Pete, thanks so much for joining us, because
thank you.
It's going to be really interesting, you know, and it's been fascinating for me, because I've learned stuff that I didn't know, and I should know, and I'm sort of ashamed to say it, but you know, it's never too late to learn, and also it's never too late for the government to look back on what happened and put it right. It's the police, it's the government, it's massive, isn't it? So both of you, thank you. It's been absolutely brilliant.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Okay. Everyone else, don't forget, do your best. Don't forget they're down the club on Saturday and at the Villa the following Sunday. And any ideas anyone has to help us to raise this money and to raise the profile of the Justice Group, let's do it. Okay, guys? Brilliant.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank
Thank
you.
you. Bye-bye.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.